You are listening to
The Free Amigos.
Hey, I'm Casper.
I'm Mark.
And I'm Tony.
Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to podcast number 11. And today we got quite a difficult topic. Well, especially quite difficult to think about. Because what we're going to talk about this week is freedom of your own mind. Are we our minds? Can we trust our minds? Or are we just floating souls in the eternal universe? And this week, of course, we got the Free Amigos and a special guest. Flori, how are you doing?
Hi guys, I'm doing great. It's a wonderful energy, a lot of masculine and feminine energy over there. I love this. It's one of my favorite topics, like, freedom of the own mind. This is what we are living right now, I guess, right?
Exactly. And as always, let me introduce the other Free Amigos. Mark, how are you doing over there?
Very well, mate. Yeah. My daughter's up and about. She dropped a lunchtime nap. So let's see. There might be a bit of background noise. Maybe you can cut that out on the edit.
I'll do my best, as always. Sometimes I cut it out, and sometimes I just leave it in.
Yeah.
And Tony, how are you doing?
Yeah, all good. Just there's a lot of builders in at the moment, so there's some banging, crashing, and whatever you hear, then if you can edit that out as well, that'd be great. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks, guys. A lot of noise going on, but let's get this topic started. Mark, I give the mic to you.
Yes, I've been sort of catching up on a lot of Flori's videos today, actually, on Instagram. And you've got an amazing message, like something that I've discovered only in the last 7 years from my own kind of difficulties is this way to manage our minds and to realize that we're not our minds and to connect with the truth of ourselves. And I know your name you go by is the Soul Whisperer. And it seems to me that you've had quite a deep understanding of reality. And I just wonder, where did this start for you? I know when I looked at your website, you talk about a trip to India and a Kundalini awakening. How long ago was that? And whereabouts did you go in India?
Well, you won't believe it, but let's say that I heard the awakening call about 5 years ago, but it was like, going from the slumber just like that, very gradual. And there are stages of the awakening. The true big leap forward was after this spiritual trip to India. And I have been guided there. I have been through a lot of synchronicities, and I do meditate a lot, and I do a lot of invocations of the divine feminine entities. So I remember that I was doing a lot of invocation of Mary Magdalene, and I have been guided in such a divine way to go there through numbers, through the right people at the right time. And when I arrived there, I had this private meeting with this woman, this enlightened woman, and it was so expanding. I had a kind of karmic fever for 3 days, and it was such a deep transformation. When I came back home, everything was different. I was talking like a replay. I was talking so slowly. Everything was so slowed down. And I needed about 3 weeks to come back at normal. But it was very, very transformational, and I am very grateful for that.
So what was the practice then is it Kundalini yoga that you got into when you were over in India? How did you achieve that awakening?
I have never done yoga in my entire life. For me, the true yoga is the union of mind, spirit, body, everything that becomes one. And a lot of spiritual seekers, they come from the New Age culture, and I've been there also. I guess that we all start from somewhere. There are people who have never read a book in their whole lives, and they are so connected. I have met my partner. He basically lived in the Amazonian jungle, and he had never read a book in his whole life, and he is so connected. So I think that knowledge and being are a little like interconnected, but sometimes we get too much focus on knowledge, and I've been there. And it was so overwhelming that I was like doing a kind of overdose of spiritual shopping. I was like fishing everything everywhere, and I thought that I knew everything. So I just dissolved a big part of my arrogant ego, and I've built it another one huge, because I thought I knew everything.
Like a spiritual ego.
So that was a kind of cold shower that I've got when I realized after India that what is truly important is experience, transforming that concept into experience. And that came after that trip in India. What happened was that I had this neediness of silence, pure silence. No guided meditation, no music meditation, no yoga, just pure awareness and deep silence. In Hindu, they call that place, that dimension, they call it samadhi. I didn't have that before India. I didn't have it. I didn't touch that dimension. I am very grateful to the master of my heart that I love, which is Eckhart Tolle. I am a student of Eckhart Tolle, and I love his books, and I've been to all his seminars, but I knew everything very much conceptually. After India, I started to practice presence, but after India, everything deepened, because when this Kundalini energy awakens in a woman, I talk from my perspective as woman, because Kundalini energy, sexual energy, is divine feminine. So when I got through that, I realized a little bit that it's much more than I thought I was, much, much, much more. And I start to practice everything. And I've touched that dimension when I could see I was here, and the thought was here, and I knew that I'm not it. That concept became experience. I was the space in which all this was dancing, and I was the space also in which emotions were dancing. So I said, okay, if I'm not the thought, if I'm not the emotion, then who am I? And I start to ask myself, who am I, every single day in my deepest meditations. And whatever answer comes is not it. It's just nothing. It's just nothing. But in that nothing is all there is. And when you touch that dimension, you wish to touch it again and again. And then is when the mind is subsiding. It's there, it wants to know. Because awareness doesn't need to know anything. So when that is how I start to realize when I practice this kind of meditation, I start to follow, I don't know if you guys know Muji. Mm-hmm. I start to follow his invitation. The invitation is something like he's inviting you in that space in a very beautiful and simple way, but it needs a bigger openness to go in that place where he wants to bring you. So this is how everything started in a bigger way when I start to practice, but true practice.
Because that's the big problem that you are touching there, right? Is that trying to understand. We all grow up with learning and understanding and practicing the mind. But trying to understand the nothingness is such an extremely strange experience. And I did I wrote a blog about that once. How difficult, like the zero with the ring removed. Even if you have a zero, it's still a ring. How do you can get rid of that? Well, do you have an empty sheet of paper? It's still an empty sheet of paper. And one I really liked was where, I can't remember who it was and where I read it, but there was this Buddhist teacher that when his students lost the state of nirvana, or the state of being, which happens to everyone, as it's not a permanent state, but they would go like, oh, great teacher, I lost it. How can I get it back? And he would say, go outside and talk to the tree. And the moment when you understand what the tree is, then you are back. And for some, that will be just a couple of minutes. For some, that will be days or weeks. And I've tried this with a lot of people as well that were interested in finding that emptiness and the empty space, because it is a tree. First of all, the word is a word, and so there's all those steps of the mind in between the nothingness and the object or the thing that you're looking at. It is a really hard practice, right?
I would say it's impossible to understand with the mind. That's the problem. You try and understand consciousness or awareness with the mind. Yeah. It's impossible. It's like trying to put I think I've heard it described as like trying to empty the ocean into a bucket. You know, consciousness is infinite, and the mind is finite. So it's impossible to understand. And once you kind of get your mind around that, okay, I can't work this out. The only way I can understand it is to completely quiet my mind and just listen in meditation or whatever spiritual practice you've got.
And just give up. I think that's exactly the moment when you give up. And this is the main thing. What I find so fascinating is that the mind is a good servant but a really bad leader. And as long as that mind thinks that it can hold on, you will never get there. And the moment when your heart and your soul and your being can say, I give up, and then suddenly you're enlightened. You gave up. You won from the mind, and that's such a strange feeling. But I think that did you have that same experience? That you kind of were fighting, reading, trying to understand everything, and then give up, and then you're there? Or how was that for you, Flori?
Well, through giving up, it's more like surrendering to that nothingness. And there is also something in us that sees that seeker. There is also this infinite awareness that is also observing the little observer. So when we when we get there and we see that there is nothing, Eckhart puts it very well when he says no thing. So it is so much space and it's so quiet that mind cannot, it's like a burden. Mind cannot take it, it's too much. I've been there also, I've touched that silence when it was so silent that mind was shouting, wanted to go out from there because it was no time in there and it was no food for the mind. So it wanted to hypnotize me in one of the dimensions, in future or past. So I also saw that I being awareness in that moment, that as Casper said, we lose it, but there is something in us seeing that we are losing something. But it's when you see that, you didn't lose anything. It's just that it's like oscillating between dimensions because this is the era when we are learning how to stay in our true essence. And it is gradual until it won't be necessary to be gradual. So I also recognize these moments of, being hypnotized by something that I project in the future, like wanting to do my YouTube channel, wanting to help people, spending much time on tech, and I realize that I am, hypnotized by it, and then I come back. But it's, mind is always, it will always try to threaten you with something. You see, you're not good enough, you're losing it again. So I think we all have been through that.
That's the ego, isn't it? But as Ram Dass, have you looked much into Ram Dass as well? I know you've obviously got similar teachers to the ones I've looked into. He says you've got to honour the remembering and the forgetting. So it's almost like, you don't say that the forgetting part is bad. You honour that as well. It's a crucial part of the process of awakening as well. This constantly forgetting who you are and sort of identifying with the mind again. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a steady, gradual process. If you went bang and awakened straight away, you wouldn't be able to handle it. It has to be very slow. And I don't know what you think about that, because you had this it sounds like you had a big, grand awakening like some of these spiritual leaders have. But, I think it's not for everybody. I think a lot of people just need to be slowly, gradually awakening over time and practice.
Well, I honestly and humbly think that we all have it. And when somebody feels like teaching, well, for me it's not like this. For me it's just like reminding, because teaching implies like I need to add something. So when you remind a soul because this is why it's soul whisperer. It's like going over, transcending that part of the personality and talking directly to the soul. Because when I look into somebody's eyes and I say, I see you, it's like seeing myself in them. This is why it was very simple for me to understand people's behavior during this pandemic, their fear, their reaction. So when I was seeing their reactions, something was in my mind, like, forgive them, Father, they don't know what they do. So as Eckhart says, forgive them as they don't know who they are. So they are behaving like this because they don't know who they are. When you know who you are, you know who you have in front of you. So you will never harm everyone, either emotionally, physically, verbally. So teaching for me, it doesn't sound very, very good to me. It's like, helping others to remember.
That was one of the things that I found out as well, is that I always say, don't teach, don't preach, inspire. It's especially when it comes to spirituality or religion or what, because it basically is the same. But it's so strange that a teacher is someone that thinks he read all the books and he's going to give you the information. And a preacher is even one step further, because he says, I've read all this and this is the one and only truth. And if you don't agree, you should agree. And so that's why I always say, like, don't teach, don't preach, inspire. And then the biggest difficulty that I found there, because the next step, how to inspire, is show, don't tell. Because if you tell, you are teaching or preaching again. So you need to show that you are. And then we're talking about something that is not capable to be understood with the mind, as we just said now, right? So the mind cannot understand it. So then you can also see that if you tell people, the mind will not understand it anyway. So the best thing to do is just to show. And I actually have a lovely anecdote there when some friends came over to Cambodia, when I was living in Cambodia. And I said, we were talking about spirituality and they really wanted to get there. So we sit on the beach underneath the palm trees and you are in the center of the universe. It's beautiful, it's brilliant. And I said, this is it. Look around you, this is it. And they said, oh, okay. So she took out her phone and a little Bluetooth speaker and she put on a podcast about being free. And I was like, what are you doing? Well, that's not it. You are there already. And now you're going to listen to how to get there. And I didn't know what to say. So the only thing what I could do is I just took off all my clothes and I run into the water. Just show. What else can I show? That? Yeah, it was like
Casper's bum again.
Yeah, but I need. How else can I say this? I cannot say, hey, you should not listen to the podcast. I was just running around like, look, we are free souls. We're at the ocean, woohoo! And they were sitting at the beach going, trying to understand. It was such a strange clash, but yeah, I love that one.
Yeah, it really is. This podcast is about freedom, but we're really talking about here is the ultimate freedom, isn't it? Like understanding that you're not your mind, and once you've done that, and you've got control over your mind, you've got control of your actions, and you've got control over your destiny as well. And this is something that is very hard to explain to somebody who hasn't got a sort of spiritual practice in place. I know you said there's people that have just naturally understand this, but certainly it took me a long time of meditating to understand this concept of not being the mind. But the one thing I just wanted to move on here is, we've had people on recently who've been through dark times, dark night of the soul, as I call it, and it seems to me that is an essential part of the path. Going through the dark to realise the light. And I've read on your website as well. You've obviously been through dark times, and do you think that is an essential part of the journey? And if so, what was that dark night of the soul like for you that led you towards this light and this understanding of who you are?
Absolutely. That was wonderful. You touched my heart. Nobody that comes and incarnates into this dimension will ever be only a spark of light. We have that inside of us. That is also consciousness. All the darkness and all the shadow is part of us. And many, many people, even awakened souls, they are not enough aware to realize I was there also. This is why I include myself in this, because I thought I felt so in such a deep blissfulness that I thought that's it. This is it. So now I realize that I'm learning something every day from a different perspective. Like learning is like reminding myself something different every day, but something different pops up every day. So I was in my period of thinking in a way that was very distorted, and I thought that all the negative emotion were coming up because I wasn't enough spiritual. And it was backwards. When you are awakening, you are ready for integration, for becoming an alchemist, for transforming the shadows into light, as transforming the heavy metal into gold. So that is a huge opportunity to heal yourself through negative emotion, because you give them space to be. Because infinite awareness doesn't judge. Never. So it's like infinite allowing for everything to be as it is. So if you are at that point of awareness and you can allow, truly allow everything to be as it is without labeling as good or bad, you are out of duality. And this is why we choose to come in this dimension in this period of time, because we have answered the call. And you know, Jesus said that the awakening call will be for everyone, but not everyone will answer to it. So when you choose to answer, it's because you are ready. So if you are ready also for the shadow, because the shadow wants to be seen, and the great part is that it wants to be loved. And that, my dear brothers, is a good work.
Challenge.
That is a whole challenge. I've been through this very deep fears, and I come from a place that I've been raised through very much big dose of manipulation, mental manipulation in Romania. I was born in Transylvania, so I was born from an alcoholic father, and my mom, she was always suffering from this emotional disturb in her mind. She was always creating scenarios, inexistent scenarios in her mind. So I didn't have an example for my family, a positive one, because I chose them like this. I chose them for the lessons. So coming from a country like that, now I realize why did I choose my parents, and why I have been through this sexual abuse, and because I need to remind myself how to forgive, how to open my heart. And that is all divine feminine energy. And this is what is lacking on earth right now. This is what the earth is getting through right now, because it basically reflects the inner side of humans, because they are not all ready to embody and to fully feel their shadow. Planet's shadow is, we are seeing it right now. That is also our shadow. And until we don't learn and we don't understand and we don't remember how to make space for that to be, that means that we are still sleeping. So when you are fully awake, nothing, absolutely nothing bothers you, because who is getting bothered is you as a person, not the real I. The real I is not bothered by anything, and I've touched that dimension, but it was just glimpses of it. As Casper says, I am not capable yet to constantly keep that samadhi state that I do touch in my deepest meditations, where basically when you touch that dimension, nothing is lacking and you feel like you could accept everything. You are so big that you know that nothing can harm you in that place. So if we could just keep that, we would live as enlightened people. But we need to learn how to remember maybe how to how to make space for the negative emotions, because when there is enough light in you, the shadow will come up because you are ready for it. And from a woman perspective, usually I go very deep. Every time if I feel fear of something, I go very deep to really find the origin of it, to see where does this originate really. I really go deep and I allow myself to fully feel. I don't get distracted to take the phone or to do a walking, a 10 minutes walking, to just escape from that state. I stay there and I fully feel it, and miraculously it goes away. And when it comes back, if it comes back, it's a little bit easier every time, because you have already dissolved a part and a little part and another one until you realize that many of your fears have been just dissolved, but there are many who are not ours. There are many fears, collective fears, dancing in the one consciousness, and we all feel it if we are empaths and we are enough open to that. We feel it and we recognize it as not ours. For example, I know for sure that I have never been afraid of this virus or whatever, because I've chosen to see it from a different perspective. I've chosen to see it as another stage of my awakening, as a blessing for growing, a blessing for slowing down. All the planet needed to slow down. But I realized that there were moments when I felt like there is no hope. I felt that, and I know for sure because I went into my mind to see the narrative, to see if I have maybe been identified with some thought. But I saw the thoughts coming and going, so I knew that I didn't identify. So that fear coming out from nowhere, it wasn't mine, because I knew inside of me that I have never been afraid of the virus, but it was the fear of death that everyone was feeling it so strongly. In Italy, it was very, very dense. We've been through very low energies, you guys, and I live in Tuscany, and I was wondering, I was always on my balcony, staying under the sunlight to just charge my pineal gland, and staying there and vibrating and staying in full silence. And the silence outside was so silent that I was like, what is people doing? They were all shut in their houses. Nobody was coming even on the balcony a little bit just to breathe. So I realized that they are so afraid, and the biggest fear was the fear of death. And I had moments when I felt like there is no hope, and I know that it wasn't mine because it's not my perspective. I have never been like this. I have never thought a little thought like there's no hope, but I felt like the only way for freedom was to get out of my body and to go back home and to just leave the body, and that's it. I don't want to stay in this dimension. That was what was coming up. Yeah.
I was going to ask you about the whole pandemic, actually, because my view on it is it was part of the Earth's evolution, a part of our evolution. And it's interesting to see, so interesting to see how different people reacted. You know, the other podcasts I listened to, and they got into a lot of paranoia and fear over this being some kind of conspiracy, some government conspiracy, something for the Illuminati or 5G. And it was so interesting to see the fear escalate within people, you know. And I was very much the same. I was just like, well, you know what, all I can do is keep my own energy high, look after myself. Yes, follow the guidelines, but if you eat well, if you sleep well, get some sun, you know, get you exercising when you can. What else can you do? If the virus is going to take you, it's going to take you. You know that. You know, we can't really do much more than that. You know, so I wasn't one of these people who got involved in the whole paranoia. You know, thinking it was some external force that was, you know, looking to control us. But it was so interesting to see how people sort of spiraled off into this fear during this time. Is that your view, that it's part of the planetary awakening and it just needed to happen, and we all come out of it in this new normal in a better place?
Well, I know for sure that there is no mistake in the universe. Universe does not do mistakes. And in Hindu culture, they call this period of these centuries the Kali Yuga. And Kali is the goddess of destruction, which means that she needs to destroy before creating something new. So regarding to the Tony's question about what do you mean other people's fears, is also our ancestors' fears, because this time of global evolution, global means that even plants have been changing their frequency because of the electromagnetic field. So we are basically living the biggest era of transition of humanity. It has never happened like this before, like a whole planet changing frequency. And from a very deep perspective, this is the second coming of Christ under the form of Christ consciousness, which is oneness, which is what this pandemic is as opposite, because it's creating separation. So this is our biggest challenge right now. And I've heard someone saying, like, if you don't wake up right now, it will take another lifetime. This is the right time for awakening, and there are many souls awakening right now. And I do feel inside of me as a soul that this is what the earth needed to go through, to just cleansing out all the old karma. Because if we have our physical body, energy body, emotional, mental, and spiritual body, Mother Earth has it too, from a magnetic point of view, because feminine energy is magnetic and masculine divine energy is electric. So we create altogether the electromagnetic field. But what is lacking right now is feminine energy. This is the awakening of the also the earth is like changing frequencies, all rising up. We are all receiving this supramental light coming onto us, and this is why sometimes we feel so tired. We feel so low, but out of nowhere. Because if we would have received all the light all together, the physical body would explode. We are not ready to that. We need to do it gradually. So yes, we needed that. And who is still there in that third dimension, not knowing who they are and not being ready for it, they will leave the planet soon, because they are not ready for this, for this huge energy. And this is why it's a blessing being on Earth right now and vibrating higher and higher. And we can give so much to others only by being present, just near to them, just staying there, present. When you are in a bus and there is, somebody's fighting, just take a look and be present. And you can feel a difference in that space. Just be in that moment without labeling. I'm practicing all this every single day.
Yeah, it has been very. I know people who have, I've talked to them about meditation in the past, and they've, I haven't got time for it. I don't know how to do it, and all of a sudden, a couple of my friends have started meditating in the last couple of weeks. I think also the message that we're putting out there, obviously how we all met, is through mentors, the entrepreneur's journey, and I think that is a part of awakening as well. Get out of these kind of 9-to-5 jobs that you get stuck in and you feel unfulfilled and you're just doing it to earn a paycheck. Create something for yourself. Create your own business around your passion and purpose. And I think this is a big part of it as well. And we're seeing that through business as well as, merely through, the larger concepts of understanding who your mind is, actually creating something that's in alignment with who you really are. I think that's a big part of it as well. So what does that mean for you? Because obviously you're on this entrepreneur's journey now, and obviously I know I'm checking it out earlier. You've got your own healing program that you've got out. Is that something that started recently, or something you've been building for a while?
You won't believe it, but when I started to wanting to change something, it was like an answer to my prayers. I was praying during one of my full moon rituals, and as you all know, the moon is a feminine energy, and women, we are a little more, we go deep into it. So I was there asking, because I knew that it was a changing coming up, and I didn't know what it was, and I was like, I know what I came here to do, but just please show me how to do it, and I promise I will do it. I didn't know how, because I know nothing about technology. I'm learning right now. I'm doing great big steps forward. But I saw an ad on YouTube from a guy who was marketing on SFM, and I didn't know what SFM was. I usually skip the ads. I don't believe in them. I don't like them. But this guy was so vulnerable, and it was so authentic that got my attention. And when he started to speak...
Can I ask? Who was it?
It was Patrick. It was Patrick Chatlin. He's a Dutch guy. He's a Dutch guy. And I love that so much.
Patrick who was it?
Patrick Chatlin.
Chatlin. No.
I've not come across him yet, no.
And I looked at the ad, and then I subscribed to the app, the first app of $29.99 or something like that. And then I heard Stuart speaking. And when I heard Stuart speaking, what happened was that I recognized them as a soul. Maybe you won't believe it. Maybe my language is too Hindu. I don't know. I just recognized him as frequency.
Really?
He was there. He was vibrating so high, and I was, this is it. This is what I have been asking for. So I knew that he was giving opportunity to people to just find their true passion. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to talk to people. I want to hug people. I want to do webinars. I want to create programs. I want to write ebooks. I want to do everything. I have a lot of creative energy. I do my energy healing every day. I cleanse my channels and everything. So I knew that I can create something from there. But I was so afraid, and it was one of my biggest challenges, because I didn't know nothing about technology. And I bought my first laptop in December. I went through the modules, and then I realized that I didn't do it right, because I wasn't an SFM promoter. I wanted to promote my own brand, and I was one of not so many people who were, marketing their own brand. I didn't know how to do it. I had to start from somewhere, so I have created this energy healing program for free, because I wanted for them to feel the energy that goes away from you, all that dense energy while you are doing the program. The program is very raw. I didn't know how to edit videos. I didn't know. I've been helped by my partner, and I did what I did. I said, you know what, it's the first time I will live it like this. I want to be authentic, and I did a lot of mistakes in the videos. I laughed so much, and I said, I want to be authentic. I will leave it as it is. And then I started to write my ebook. I'm still working on it, and then I built the website. And what I really want to do is leaving Italy. I run an organic souvenir shop for the tourists in Tuscany. It's a beautiful shop. It's a beautiful place to be. There is no technology up there, up in the hills. Everybody's coming with a funicular. It's such a beautiful place to be. But I do about 12, 13 hours a day. I love working with people. My customers are my best friends. I sell a lot. I do what I do with my heart. But right now with the pandemic, I had my shop closed, and I needed to reinvent myself. And what I realized is that I don't want to work 12 hours a day, even if I like working with people. Sometimes I feel drained, because everybody's asking me hugs, and I love to hug them, but energy is energy, and not everybody's on that frequency. And when you arrive home after 12, 13 hours, you're just like that. And I realized that I don't like the weather here in winter. It's very cold, it's very humid, and I thought from about 1 year, 2 years ago that I would like to change, to go on an island or in a place where it's always a sunny day, where I have the sea close to me, and this is how I want to live. I want to work from my computer, work with people. I have started to do some energy healing work online. I'm still working on prices because I'm still afraid not to be too expensive. I'm still working on this. And I have created a private group with women here. I'm doing my best because I believe in my mission and I believe in my goal. I mean, I really want to live a life that I know I deserve. So maybe my success for now would be a huge success for somebody else. But now I have realized that I can do better. There is another dimension. There is a way of living and enjoying what you are doing 2-3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, without, you know, staying 12, 13 hours a day in a shop and just having the sea in front of you and the sun and standing there all day. This is how I want to live. I want to eat healthy. I want to have my own vegetables. This is my goal.
Now that's a proper ad, isn't it? SFM.
Well, my partner's dream is to have the van life, you know, and we can do that. But we're building this. He's a handpan player, and I love his project. He's doing well, but we really wish to change the place. Italy right now, from an energy point of view, I feel like it's not the place for me anymore. You know, we feel it when we need to change something. And it was one of the Stuart's webinars when he was talking about this, like feeling the difference. He was in Miami, I think, I don't know where he was, and he came back to London and he felt this like this from an energy point of view, and it was like I wasn't in the mood to do anything. It's the energy field. It's fundamental, you guys. When you live, look a little bit at the degree of depression in London and the degree of depression, I don't know, in Bali, maybe. It's a huge difference. People are depressed because also of the weather. There are many of them, and I love weather in Italy. It's not that, but winter, I don't want to spend winter here. I want to change. I want to go away.
Yeah, that's just fascinating the way you talked about that journey to SFM. It was very similar to me in that I've been on this sort of, you know, quite long, 7-year-long sort of spiritual awakening, I suppose you could say, where I've been to Peru and worked with plant medicine and stayed in Buddhist monasteries, learning to meditate as a response to my own mental health problems. You know, that's what kind of started to wake me up. But I was the same in that I had this whole story and I knew I wanted to help people and I wasn't doing it in my job. But then, like, that SFM ad, somehow I didn't skip it. Something about it connected with me. And the guy, Alan, who I went through, I later found out that he'd worked a lot with plant medicine, ayahuasca. So it was interesting.
Wow.
Like,
Did you
connection.
did the ayahuasca ceremony in Peru?
I've done it in Peru 5 times and 6 times in Europe as well.
Wow,
So
can you describe a little bit? What did you feel, please, if we have enough time? I'm so fascinated by this. I would like to try it too.
Yeah, I think it would suit you. It's not for everybody. And this is something I try and tell people, is that if you feel that calling, which I can tell you just felt it, you have felt it. I don't know, did you say your partner had been over in the Amazon?
Yes, he did it. He did that, but I want to hear your testimony because his is amazing. Amazing, just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to describe it in the aftermath because you're not in that dimension anymore. But basically, certainly I can remember my first ceremony where it was the kind of classic. I had one cup and I thought, oh, nothing's really happening here. So I went up for a second one. And when the whole ceremony had finished and everyone was kind of chatting in the kitchen, all of a sudden, reality started to break down and I couldn't understand what people were saying. Everything around me started breaking down into shapes and colours. So initially it was quite frightening. I went back into the tent that we were in, and the shaman, I said, I don't know what's happening here. I need to come back to reality, you know, this reality. And the shaman said to me, welcome to ayahuasca. You know, so I was like, I expected it to be like, I don't know if you've ever done something like mushrooms or something like that, quite a pleasant experience.
I have never taken anything like this in my whole life, but what did you exactly feel?
It's so hard to explain it, but basically, my recollection, it was like the idea of time completely disappeared. So you could say, like, we've been on this podcast now, whatever, an hour or so, but I couldn't distinguish how much time had gone by, whether an hour had gone by or 1,000 years, you know. And that's the kind of very frightening thing about it from a mind perspective. The mind can't comprehend what's going on. I remember thinking, you know, how the everyday things like relationships and work and, you know, just generally trying to stay alive in this dimension, how little that matters, you know, when you're confronted with infinity of time, infinity of dimensions. The idea of being a human being, and Mark Dallimore, disappeared, you know, ego death completely. So I didn't know where I was, I didn't know who I was. And slowly, the only way I got through it was to let go, just to trust, basically. You know, if you fight when you're in those dimensions, that's when you can have some real problems, and people can have some, you know, really bad experiences. But by letting go and just trusting, eventually the idea of being a human being and this dimension that we're in with time and, you know, the 3 dimensions, 4th dimension, starts to crystallize again, and you start to remember, oh yeah, I'm a human being. Oh yeah, my name's Mark. It's impossible to describe to someone who hasn't been there, you know. But what I would say is that you need to have that calling, because it's not for everybody. You know, the idea of just completely, it's like a hard reset on a computer, basically. You just disappear completely, and then you come back, reset. And because I was struggling with mental health so much, I went, you know, I did it a number of times. I did it in Peru as well, and it's even more powerful over there if you want the real, authentic experience. And when I was over there, you know, different level. I went to heaven, you know, which was like a complete quietening of the mind, just complete peace. I went to hell, which was like complete chaos, you know, pain and madness. And I met God. You know, I mean, everything you can possibly imagine happened. You know, God appeared to me as like an infinite wall of shapes and colours, and I just knew that was God.
Did you get his autograph?
I wish. I asked him. I remember he asked me a question. He said, well, I call it a he, but, you know, it was obviously, you know, who knows how you describe it. But he said, "What are you doing here?" Of all the things that you'd think God would ask you.
You asked him the same. But how did you know? Did you immediately know it was God?
Yeah, I just had a feeling. I just knew it was God, and it appeared to me as just like a huge wall of colours and shapes that were moving. And I remember he just asked me, "What are you doing here?" And I just said, you know,
I don't know.
I think I just said something like, "I'm looking for healing," basically, and that was it. It was gone. But wow. That was my recollection of that moment. But yeah, that was one of the most profound moments. And there was another moment where it was almost like, you've ever seen the film Avatar? I kind of went to the toilet in the middle of the jungle, and it was in the dark in the middle of the night, and my footsteps were lit up behind me in like neon footprints behind me, which was like, I remember looking at that like, what on earth is that? You know, it was like something being in Avatar world or something, you know. Incredible highs and indescribable lows. It's terrifying when it takes you down there, but that's part of the journey. You have to face that, not only your own darkness, but the whole darkness of the universe, you know. I could go on and on about that, but it's not my podcast.
What I like so much about what you're saying now is that this takes us back to the beginning of the podcast as well. The first thing you say, of course, time. Time is a thing that we can only understand with our mind, but our soul doesn't understand time. This is, of course, why people say reincarnation and the souls are out there in the universe. And so, and exactly the second thing that you said, and this I know from a lot of people, even when they just smoke a joint, it's emotion enhancing or fear enhancing. So it depends, like what a lot of people say, like if you need to be in the right mindsets to go somewhere. And if you have a lot of fears of losing your mind, well, what you just did, the moment, if you have a lot of fear of losing your mind and you walk and you see fluorescent footsteps behind you, you'll freak out. But if you are kind of like, and then we go back, like I said, to the beginning of the podcast, let go. Okay, just let it happen. Let it all happen. Let's see what happens. And that's again that same thing that we started off with. The mind. Let's and that's the good thing, of course, with an ayahuasca, or so take you really far away from the concept of the mind into the universe. And I like that. And you apparently did that. You let go, and that really works.
Being that state of utter silence, underlined in bold, it's just that intrigued me when you said that. And like Mark was saying about controlling your mind, how do you quiet everything down to get in that state of utter silence? That fascinates me when you said that.
Initially, it took me a little while. Initially, it took me some mantras, because I realized that I was confusing contemplation with meditation. So the real meditation comes after the contemplation. The real meditation comes when you bring the mind in a neutral state. So you need to disciplinate your mind in a way that every thought that comes, you leave it, and you just don't enter into that energy field, and you leave it going away, because mind will start to threaten you with everything. So you just leave it, and when you feel like you are hypnotized by one thought, and then you go back to neutrality, and then you go back to neutrality. You do that every day for 1 hour. You go back to the neutrality, and when you keep the neutral state for a long time, you touch that dimension of samadhi. That is the samadhi state, when everything that, basically the mind subsides, because you didn't believe in any thought, and at the beginning, a tsunami of thoughts will come up. Believe me, because there is so much space and all that noise wants to come up. But the difference between contemplation and meditation is to just contemplate on something. Contemplate, like do a mantra, and put your concentration on the mantra.
I will add a link to a documentary about this Akashic field. There's a beautiful documentary made by someone, and it's for free for everyone, because that's one of the things you guys most probably also know. The moment when you go into that state of everythingness, everyone deserves that. Everyone deserves to be there. And the flip side, so the other side of the coin, which you said, like, nothing can harm you there. Yeah, so if nothing can harm me anymore, I can share whatever I want. So this guy had that same realization. I don't know how, but he just started making YouTube videos just to explain to people. And they're amazing. They're really, really amazing. Even for everyone that has been in those states or is in those states. I don't know how he managed to explain it, but I will give you that link, and also for everyone that's listening, of course. It's definitely a must-watch.
Well, Muji, for example, says, when you touch that dimension, don't talk to anyone, because they think you will crazy. Yeah. So this is why sometimes I had some struggling with my avatar, the target, but my audience, because I didn't know which stage of awakening to talk to. I didn't know who I'm talking to, because I was talking and I felt like they didn't get it. So I thought, okay, I will go to a level where anyone can grasp what I say, but I would like to get people through experience, because books will never give you that space. Book will give you that concept, but until the concept becomes an experience, you won't get it. And I would like to add just one more thing, that I needed time to touch that space. I had to discipline my mind in a way that I was following the neutral state, and then I was going away, and then I was coming back, and then I start to put one mantra, like, I rest in spirit's peace. I rest in spirit's peace. And I was following that mantra. And then at a certain point, mantra wasn't needed anymore. So I just a little bit, a step at a time, I just trained my mind in a way that when a lot of thoughts are coming, I just put my attention on my breathing, and then I go slowly into that. I can realize that there is much or less narrative mind, but by going into that space and observing the thought and letting it go, and then going on the neutral state, as Muji says, at one certain point, you need to shift your attention from what you are seeing, I mean thoughts or emotions, on who is seeing that. So when you change the perspective, I mean when you change the direction, you see yourself. It's like consciousness becoming conscious of itself. That is the point. I mean, you need to go there. You need to go there. But before going there, there are stages. I don't go there so easily every time.
That's exactly what I wanted to say. I wanted to say that, and I think that you said that before, is that the first time you go into, at least in the right direction, sometimes in your meditation, if your mind's not there, the moon is not in the right position, whatever, sometimes you just go on the path, you know it's there, you can almost see that wall what you're talking about, you can almost see God in the distance, you know you're on the right path, but you will not get there today. At least you went a little bit further. And the more times you do it, the easier you can get in. And for people that are on this path in meditation, I want to give you a little trick there, because the reason why it's easier to get to that state is because you know the way. And it's like you've been walking that way. You know, oh, it's left on this tree. Oh, it's right after that, whatever it is. And I'm just making a concept here, of course, because there are no trees or houses there. But what you can do is you can also, if you are fully in the state, if you're fully floating, completely in the Zen state there, you can make bookmarks. You can put seeds there. You can put things there, so the next time when you go meditating, you can fully concentrate on that end destination of your meditation. And so, because you know, okay, let's think about that seed and everything that is in between you and that seed now. Oh, that's the tree on the left, that's the house on the right, blah, 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 blah. And you can almost jump cut. And if you practice that long enough, you can almost, sometimes when I really need to get in there, when I'm in serious trouble, I can almost go like that. But I can almost go, now I need to be there. And I make my surroundings, poof,
like
poof,
this.
and I go in. And I can be in there, yeah.
Super.
And so this is, of course, again, a lot of practice, but these are shortcuts you can make. And I just wanted to give that for everyone that is on this path and on this journey. You can just...
Okay, so how do you put those seeds? How do you do it? Because I do touch that space, but I need some time to get there.
Yeah, two things. So I do so when I'm in that full state, like you said, Mark, there's no time. So you can stay for quite a long time, and it doesn't matter because the rest of the world doesn't matter anymore. Nothing matters anymore. But it's beautiful. So now what I do is I do the same what you just said. I take one step back from myself. So now I'm in that space, and I take one step back from myself. So what I can do now is I can just walk around. And I can walk around, and I make notes, mental notes, of everything that I see around me, and also everything that my body is doing. I can feel my heart pressure, I can feel my breath without... It's not me breathing, because I'm outside of myself now. So I can kind of make like a complete situation of everything around me. And then, if let's say, I want to go in now, I can also feel my heart going too fast, my blood pressure is not right, there's noise there, I don't need that, I need this music for now. And so that's kind of like how I do that. And the seeds, putting the seeds there is something I will need to think about how you do that. I need to think about. This is one of those things that we talked about earlier, is like some things you just do, but you don't really know how yet. Because what I need to do now is I make those seeds, not with the mind, of course, because it's not there. I make those seeds with the heart. So what I need to do now is to find a mind way of explaining this to you, getting it to your mind so you can put it in your heart. But
yeah, well, sometimes it's very difficult to explain.
these things are really complex, but I will think about it. Yeah. And the moment when I have a good metaphor, I will share it. Yeah.
Thank you.
But anyone can do that as well, and just be aware of those trees, and again, the tree is a metaphor, but be aware of the metaphors that you find along the route. And it's the funny thing is the easiest way to describe it, I think, is the same thing as when you fall asleep. It's the really weird thing when you fall asleep is what you do is you pretend to fall asleep. You go lay down, I'm asleep is what you say to yourself, but you're not asleep. You're pretending to sleep so that you can fall asleep. And if you practice that long enough, it's the same thing. It's because that's where the path is. It's in between the conscious and the subconscious, of course. Like when you wake up and your mind wakes up, but you don't wake up. And you know your alarm is going to get off. But that's the path in between this, the consciousnesses. And so the more you train that, the faster you can do it, yeah. And also, I just get angry sometimes. I say, now, take me back, now. And I demand the universe to take me back because I need it, and you know that I'm going to do good stuff with it. And they go, okay, and someone opens the door and reaches out a hand and takes me in, boom.
That's what's going deep. It's interesting, you know, I wouldn't say I'm at that point where I can drop in whenever I want, but one of the thoughts that I know a lot of people struggle with, I speak to about meditation, and I notice it as well with me, is this kind of judging of the mind, judging the meditation. Oh, this meditation isn't good enough, it's not going very well, I'm not very good at meditation, you know. Those are the thoughts that often I feel myself getting pulled into. Like you were saying to Tony earlier, it's like thoughts try and pull you in. And if they do, they can take you off for 10 or 15 minutes without, and you don't even realise, and you wake up, 10 minutes gone there on a thought path, you know, about me not being a very good meditator.
Which is really strange to say that, actually. It's really strange. See, I'm not good at meditation. It's a really strange thing, sorry.
This is what I'm saying. It's like, you know, Casper's talking about going very deep and being able to drop in whenever you like. But for most people, you're dealing with this kind of thing, thoughts that are pulling you away from the present moment. And, you know, that one in particular is a tricky one for me. And, you know, it's about disidentifying from it and just coming back. Don't get frustrated. Don't end your meditation. Just, there's, you know, there's disappointment, there's doubt, there's, you know, fear, and just naming it. That's all I do is noting meditation. Fear, doubt, you know, whatever it is, and just coming back to your point of meditation, which for me is always the body, which is rooted in the present moment. But that's one that catches a lot of people out. They start thinking, I'm not very good at this meditation, and they give up. But that's just another thought. You know, That's just another thought generated by the mind. It's not truth.
Man,
it's just a thought.
That's how clever the mind is.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is just another thought. And you know what? You remind me of something. Do you know Louise Kay? Have you ever heard of her? She's very, very deep also. She was channeling years ago. She is very, very deep. And she's doing this webinars all over the world also. And I have been entering on Zoom with her 2 weeks ago, and I had a question. I raised my hand because I had a question. Because in one of my meditations, like Who Am I meditation, when it's nothing there and it's just space and there's no lack of anything, no desire, nothing, a thought pop up like, who's the one who's asking the question? And I was like, look at this. I mean, why? Because I knew it's another thought, but it was so strong that it kept my attention like, okay, really, so I am the space. There is me as subject, as consciousness. There is object, which is the question, but who am I who's asking the question? And I have asked this to Louise. So she said, like, who is the one who wants to know?
Send it round.
Who's asking that question?
All right. Am I the transcendental me, or is just another thought? And she said, it's just another thought. Is so quiet that mind wants to know more. And Deepak Chopra said that the one who's asking the question is the transcendental me, is the one who is between the dimensions and is asking the question because he's going towards that new dimension where it's not needed to know who you are, because it's absolute knowingness. Like, be still and know I am God. These words are all synonymous. It's like be still, knowing I am, the state I am, God. It's all words into one concept. So I was like, who is asking the question? And I realized that it's just another thought. Because when you are there, you already are there, but we need to get there gradually when the concentration dissolves, when you don't need to concentrate on anything, because you saw that thoughts have no power over you, but you need to create that space. And to create that space, you need to meditate. And for me, meditation, it's not a doing anymore. At the beginning, it was a doing. I felt like doing something. Right now, I'm keeping that knowingness and that awareness the more it's possible. So it's like meditating constantly. Like everything that I'm doing in a conscious way. Like talking with you right now, I fully feel my body. I feel like breathing into my stomach, into my belly. I feel that my feet are a little cold. And I am fully present into my body as awareness. I am awareness into my body right now. But I am also aware that I am in a dimension where it's still duality. We still have emotions, we still have feelings, we still have a body. And that is important to know, because if we go too high on this, too high, we need to come to touch the earth again, to be in touch with matter.
Yes, balance.
Yes.
I know this is something the shaman I worked with on the medicine ceremony said. You know, she knows a lot of people who've gone like that, too high into soul and spirit. You know, that's not necessarily the goal, really. I think it's more about balance, having the option. You know, you don't want to be completely out of this human realm. You know, you've got a job to do here. The aim is not necessarily to just progress into pure spirit and you're off. You know, although some people do that. I sent a video to the group. The guys this week, Sadhguru's wife. I don't know if you've heard of Sadhguru.
Yes, but I don't resonate too much with him.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't resonate too much. It's not something that I would follow. I'm very selective on this, and I told you at the beginning I was fishing everything. Right now I just take what it resonates with me. But when I came back from India, I was in that state that you were talking right now. I was out of time. I didn't know what day it was. I didn't know what time it was. I was fluctuating on earth. I felt like didn't walk. Like my feet were just touching the ground very slowly, and I was walking barefoot every day for 2 weeks in India. And when I came back home, I realized that I need to come back on earth. Like I was too up there. So I needed to come back and to restart a normal life, because I was staying on my balcony in this being state for days. I was just like this, just watching, connecting, not doing anything. I felt so comfortable with not doing anything. And this is a state that didn't last anyway.
Well, that's kind of what Eckhart talks about, isn't it? When he had his kind of awakening and he realised he was not his mind, he just wandered around for a long period of time, just like almost in a blissful state, before he then found some focus and direction again, you know, a mission and a purpose. Because if you're in that complete soul state, what is there to do, really? I don't know. You just wandered around for a long time, just noticing things.
This is the good thing. This is why Nirvana is not a permanent state. This is why it's not a puzzle and you can get to the end of the puzzle. It's not that you get to an end puzzle and then you go, ta-da, I fixed it. That would be ridiculous. That would mean that you would just disappear from Earth. You would become particles, you would become your soul again. No, you can't. And so,
when you're talking about this nirvana state, it's something that you are looking for? It's something that you have been looking for?
No, for me, no. For me, it came. For me, there was a state of total acceptance of everything and everything. And from there out, I could see everything, feel everything, be everything. And it was amazing because it solved all problems and everything. And so then like you said, I got back into the world, and then there were problems. And so I went back in.
So it was something that you didn't look for, it just came. What about Mark?
Well, for me, when it came, you know, working with the plant medicines, you're not in any control at this point. You have to give up control and let the plant take you where it wants to take you. If it wants to, like Casper was talking about earlier, if your greatest fear is losing your mind, guess what is going to happen? It's going to show you what it's like to lose your mind. But the good thing about that is that by letting go and observing what it's like to be insane, to lose your mind, you realise, oh, it's not as bad as I thought. I can just witness. Oh, here's my mind. It's completely insane at this point, and I'm just going to watch it. It's terrifying. There's pain. There's demons. There's but I'm just witnessing it. And so in that state, it takes away the fear of that. I no longer fear losing my mind because I've been there and I know I can observe it. But then, as so often happens with these plant medicines, you get the opposite in the next ceremony. So then you've done the work and it takes you to complete silence and bliss and peace. And you observe that as well. You don't cling to it and go, oh, I want to be here all the time. I want to come back here. You just observe. Oh, this is what complete peace and calm and serenity is like, So, for me, it's not a case of I want to get back to nirvana. I want to keep going back there. It's just, for me, it's more about just observing whatever is. Like Eckhart says, it's just accepting whatever is in the present moment. If that's pain, if that's fear, if that's nirvana, if that's bliss, it's all fine.
Exactly.
You just observe it. It's all a lesson, So that's my perspective on it.
And I think that actually rounds up the whole idea of this call. Because if you say, are you looking for it, you cannot find it. Because the mind is looking for it. The soul already is. The soul is already there. The soul is already connected. The only thing why it's not connected is because the mind is looking for it. And so and this is again that zero with the ring removed. If you are looking for it, you cannot find it because you're looking for it. You have a concept of finding it. So this is why I say when I say like about the seeds, it's basically just throwing all your cloaks off and throwing everything off. Everything that might be ego or thought, you just throw it off, boom, away. It's just going naked, boom. And now you don't have to take your clothes off. You can do it with your clothes on, but it's everything that you think you are and everything that is non-consensual what you really are, you just throw it away. It's kind of like looking but then the other way. It's the finding light in dark. So the moment when you try to find it, you will not find it. So everything that you think, just shut it off, boom. Shut it off, and then you're back.
The mind will always want, is always searching for it, but the mind, as Flori knows, I saw one of her videos today, the mind is in time. Whenever you're in the mind, you're in time, past or future.
The mind knows time. The mind knows time, and so therefore, like what you said, Mark, it's like sometimes you go in meditation and the mind thinks, and because it just tries to hold on. It tries to hold on with questions like, "What are you doing?" And actually, and this is what I said in the beginning, is like the mind is a really good servant and not a good leader. Because it's just a little child. I see it as a tiny little child. When I'm going into meditation or whatsoever, it just goes, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? Why are you doing this?" And I go, "Shut up, sit next to me."
And still, without the mind, there is no awakening. Remember that. Because what are you awakening from?
Yes, and that's important. That's really important.
Don't resist to it. Don't. Of course, Jesus said, "Deny thyself," which means don't give importance to your ego, to the illusion that you are. But when you resist to your mind, that basically is, as Carl Jung says, what you resist persists. It will come up much more resistance than before. When you leave it there, as Eckhart put it, this analogy of the sky and the clouds, like thoughts are the clouds and you are the eternal infinite sky. So whatever comes goes, and everything is traffic, but what comes and goes cannot be you, because otherwise you would be gone with it. So mind is, we need it there, we need it because it shows us where is that we fall into. Because maybe years ago I was falling into this spiritual trap of knowledge. Right now I don't fall into that. Or maybe it shows you need that. I still need that sometimes. I need to fall sometimes in there.
Well, this is interesting because we're getting to a very high plane with our thinking here, and we just got somebody come round to fix the toilet seat. So. This is the kind of balance that we're in, isn't it, guys? You know, we're in these two domains. I just wanted to see what Tony thought about all this, because I know Tony has sort of progressed into yoga, started looking into it, but there are probably a lot of people like Tony here who haven't thought about these kind of concepts. I just wondered what he thinks about this.
No, this is very, very new to me. I'm very much a novice. I've only been doing yoga for 6 months or so, and getting into meditation and just working on my personal development. But it was the silence thing that Flori started off the pod with, and just because my mind is constantly busy. Even I'm still practicing yoga, I'm still trying to get used to it. And as Mark says, just recognizing your thoughts and just letting them go. And I've used that concept before, like you just said, about seeing them as clouds, as traffic, and just observing them. Don't get involved with them. Don't be them, because then you get carried away with them, and they can consume you. So this is something I'm definitely trying to work on more, just to quiet my mind, which is when you're saying you reach that state of utter silence, that was like, whoa, how do you do that? I want that. So I wish I could just quiet
by not wanting it. By not wanting it.
Yeah, so it's that counterintuitiveness, isn't it? It's just, yeah, I'd love just to experience that, even just for a moment, just that utter divine silence. That sounds amazing.
Do you meditate every day, Tony?
Not every day, probably 4 or 5 times a week I do at the moment.
So I can humbly advise you with all my heart to do it 5-10 minutes when you first wake up, the first thing you do, because that is when your brain is oxygenated enough, so you can get intimate. If you can awake at 4 o'clock and do that meditation at 4 o'clock, the connection with the spirit will be much, much faster because of the frequency of the earth. So at 4 o'clock in the evening, all the gurus, they all are connected, and all the avatars, that they are all together right now in the Himalayas to vibrate high for the planet. You can also be permeated by that energy, and by that we are all one. So if you are there at that, in your meditation, you can find that place, and when you will find it, you will want to feel that again. You have a lot of content in your mind that it's due to a lot of things. We all have that, but I would like to add something like, okay, we leave the thought go, but what is true ego is believing in the thought. So when the thought comes up, like right now, I can't do this, I have too much thoughts, this is also a thought. If you believe in it, you create that reality, and you already know that. But I sometimes am not sure if when a thought comes and is very heavy, I feel that emotion of the thought, and I'm asking, did I identify myself with the thought or not? Do I believe in this thought? So when you believe in the thought, that is ego, because you think you are that emotion, because the thought generates an emotion. And you have this tsunami in your head. Maybe it's due to your work, maybe it's due to, if you do that every morning, like put an intention. The intention makes half of the work, believe me. I didn't know that at the beginning, and I started to do this, to put an intention every day. And my first intention in the morning is, my intention of the day is to be constantly present, fully present in my body. When your thoughts are going like hell, like this, just use your body as an anchor. It's very important. You will never get ill, never. Just be fully into your body. As Eckhart says, when the boss is in the house, no thief can enter there. And that means no lower energies, no thought can bite you, no fear, because you are so fully present that you can observe that. So if you really want to touch that dimension, just take a commitment. This is an act of love for yourself, self-love. To give yourself time, and you'll realize that time will be necessary until you realize that there is no time. And you enter into that every morning 5 minutes, tomorrow morning 6 minutes, after tomorrow morning 10 minutes, until the mind will start to subside a little bit every time. But do that every day. Try to do that every day for you, as a gift for you. And because honestly, in this period, There are people who just don't need to meditate anymore. I do meditate. But there are those ones who have such a deep and heavy mental activity that they really need to quiet their mind. But you need to learn how to do that.
I do. I know, well, and I'm working on it because that's something for sure. Thank you for that, Flori. That was great.
Well, it's my pleasure to serve. I will give you a little nugget as man. Just see me as a sister if you can.
Yeah.
Meditation will give you the best sex you'll ever have in your life.
I agree on that. I fully agree on that.
That's brilliant. There you go, Tony.
All so different. It feels like 10 hands are touching you when you unite with the other person, which is with the same frequency like yours. I mean, if you are having sex with a woman and she is still sleeping, you are here vibrationally and she is there.
Yeah.
What happens is that she can't arrive here and you will never choose to go there because it stinks, you don't like it. It's a mind place, you don't like it. So
I think that's a good marketing strategy you got there.
There's your avatar, Flori.
Yeah, as usual with all of our stories, there's so much more we could go into, and I hope we can have you on again, because I know that there's a lot more to your life and your story that we could go into as well.
I hope for everyone that is just starting into meditation that they've learned a lot and know that there's a world out there, and yeah, the problem of course is what we started off with, the mind blocking you from being. Well, what a deep conversation. So that's it for this week, everyone. Thanks for listening, and thanks for joining, Flori, especially.
Thank you for this opportunity. It was so beautiful to share this with you all. Thank you.
Let's see you all in the, hear you all in the next podcast next week. For now, adios, amigos.
Yes, thank you.
Adios.
Adios, amigos.
You have been listening to
Free Amigos.
Hey there, hope you've really enjoyed listening or watching to the conversation today. And as promised, we have all the links to the topics discussed in the description below and also on our website.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, please feel free to hit that subscribe button or follow the link to our brand new website where you can sign up to our weekly newsletter.
Thank you for watching or listening. We hope you got something good out of it. If you've got any interesting topics you'd like us to discuss or any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And that's it. See you in the next pod. Adios.
Cheers.